You are on.
Okay, welcome back from the breakout room. So now we're going to bring you our guest speaker. And it is my privilege today to introduce today's guest speaker, Elaine Swann. So, earning her place as a respected authority figure in etiquette through her self driven research, lifestyle and etiquette expert Elaine Swann has been touted as today's hip, savvy etiquette advisor. So, nicknamed the Etiquette Lady, Elaine shares up to the minute tools and practical tips on various radio programs, as well as on The Today Show, Dr. Oz, CNN, Access Hollywood, TruTV, and more. And a recent New York Times article described her as one of the Emily Posts of the digital age. As the go to leader in everything etiquette, her advice has appeared in publications such as Modern Bride magazine, Kiplinger's magazines, and several newspapers across the US. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce and welcome Elaine Swann.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I appreciate it. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Woo!
Morning.
So good to see you all on this grand morning. Thank you so much to the chamber for inviting me to be able to share today. Thank you to John Sanders for encouraging me and Lucy Kelleher for encouraging me to join the chamber. That's why I am here. I am enjoying membership. I tell you, I went to early last year. I got so excited and went to, I think, an early chamber breakfast, maybe in February, and then that was it for the rest of the year. But I'm so glad to be with you all here today. As was introduced, my name is Elaine Swann. As the founder of the Swann School of Protocol, we are an etiquette training institute, and we provide professional development and management training for organizations and businesses. And our goal is really to help people to work better together in a variety of areas. And when people ask, does etiquette belong in the workplace? Yes, it does. How many times has someone really kind of got underneath your skin and got on your nerves and you thought, how do I handle this and keep my job at the same time, right? So that's where we come in. We come in and we help organizations. In addition to that, we have a licensing program that allows us to certify individuals and license them so that they can work as a Swann School of Protocol. And we have 20 independently owned and operated Swann schools throughout the United States, and a great group of, and growing, and we just launched internationally. I have the pleasure of sharing my advice on television shows such as Dr. Oz and so forth. So it's really, really great. I have just an incredible time sharing this advice. And like many of us, last year, we got off to a great start. I mean, we were all kind of in this space last year where we were really looking forward to a great year. We're always at the top. We've got our to-do list, we've got our goal list, and we think, you know what, I'm going to go for this. And we're excited. And then, the shelter in place orders came about. And we all thought, well, this will happen for a little while, but eventually we'll get back. So we started trying to kind of figure out our Zoom meetings and our angles and our backgrounds and so forth. And while we waited to go home, and in the middle of all of that, 8 minutes and 46 seconds happened. And it shook our world. For 8 minutes and 46 seconds, we watched our television screens, our tablets, and our phones, a man by the name of George Floyd. His life was taken right before our eyes. We watch things on television and on movies, and we see people die, but it's not too often that the average everyday American would see a man killed right before our eyes over such a long, torturous amount of time. We all waited for it to stop, but it didn't. And what did not stop from there was the uproar and the outrage that we saw that then took over our TV screens and our conversations throughout the summer. So there was a nasty little scar that we had here in the United States that had a Band-Aid over it. And that Band-Aid was ripped off in that 8 minutes and 46 seconds. It was bias and uncovered and not dealt with racism that still exists today. It seemed as though things were hopeless and we weren't going to be able to move forward. But the fact that here we are nearly a year later, we're having this conversation, it tells me that we have hope because it hasn't gone away. So the fact that I would be invited here today to talk and to share and try to figure out how can we navigate this thing called race and racism and bias tells me that as a country, we are going to be able to move forward in a very, very great way. And so I'm so thrilled to be able to come and share with you today, not only my story, but also to give you some tips and tools to use in your everyday lives. That Band-Aid that was ripped off that we saw with the death of George Floyd was not a one-time thing. As a Black woman living here in the United States, what happens for me personally is we hear these sorts of stories all the time. We share it through our news feeds and it goes through the different channels that are interesting to us on social media. But more often than not, it doesn't really make the 5 o'clock or the evening news. So this is not new. Whether it's a killing, whether it's prejudice, whether it's being arrested or detained just because of the color of your skin, it's something that happens. I'm a daughter of an immigrant. My dad immigrated here from Panama, from Central America. So I have the pleasure of being Black and Latina. And he came here to this country thinking that he was going to get a better life. And you know, he eventually joined the United States Navy because at that time, if you joined, you could get your citizenship. So yes, for the Navy. And he began to create a better life for us and for our family. But the thing is, what my dad has told me is he says, daughter, you know, if I had known, because it was right smack dab in the middle of the 60s, if I'd known that this is what America was like, I would have stayed in Panama. He was even in the Navy, fighting in Vietnam and saving lives as a corpsman. My dad fought for this country, and when he came back from Vietnam, he was treated less than a citizen. He was not allowed to sit at the same counter. He couldn't walk in, use certain fountains. My mom could not try on a dress in a store because she's a Black woman. And then you cut all the way to the choice, and they start to live the American dream. They buy the home, put the kids through school, and I grasp onto that dream and start a business. And so one day I was standing outside of a 7-Eleven because a colleague of mine, we decided, let's go grab some beverages from the 7-Eleven. And then she said, well, I'm going to go around the corner and go through the drive-through. And I said, well, it's nice outside. I'll stand outside and wait. I was standing outside the 7-Eleven, minding my own business, enjoying the sun, scrolling through my phone, and a police car stops. And the officer gets out and asks me for my ID and says, what am I doing here? And I said, well, I'm waiting. My coworker just went around the corner and I'm just waiting. He says, may I see your ID? And as a person, right, who is successful and a business owner and a rightful citizen and never committed a crime, my inside was indignant to say, well, for what? Why do you need my ID? That was what the person wanted to say. Before I could even ask that, he told me why he wanted my ID. He said, there's a rash of prostitution in this area, and you fit the description of someone that frequents this area. As a person on the inside, a business owner, a person who's never committed a crime, and surely not a prostitute, I wanted to say, how dare you? This is who I am and what I do, but guess what? As a Black woman in this skin, because I knew I wanted to get home to my family that night. I knew that I did not want to be roughed up and accosted and treated badly. The mere fact that I've heard stories upon stories about this happening, I knew, shut your mouth, take the humiliation, let the people come in and out of the store looking at you, wondering, what are you doing wrong? And show your ID and stand there and wait while they run your ID. A very humiliating moment, but this is what I lived through in my Black skin. It's an ugly thing. Now, mind you, think about this. Think about your sister, your friend, your aunt, your niece who may not look like me. Imagine them standing outside the 7-Eleven waiting for their colleague to come back and pick them up. And a police officer pulls up in front of them. Do you think they would have been asked that question? Do you think they would have had the right and the opportunity to respond the way I was thinking inside? I would say yes, because we see it often. So then now what do? How do we fix this? You know, it's these types of stories that happen every day. A lot of times as Black people, we experience these things. We go home and guess what we do? We tell our family, we tell one another, but what we don't do is we don't share that with our white colleagues and our friends. We don't, it's just a part of life. And so this Band-Aid that's been ripped off, the fact that we can have these conversations now is a good thing. So what can we do to foster conversations and to foster growth in this particular area? Number one, if you know somebody Black, don't just ask them, how are you doing? But ask, you know what? I saw this and I heard this Black lady named Elaine Swann tell me this story. Has anything ever happened like this ever happened to you? Ask, because guess what? We are waiting to tell our stories. You know, we look at the media, and believe you me, I get it with the media. I'm on television quite often, and I get it. But we hear the stories in the media, and a lot of times we think it's contrived, we think it's put together. But what I would encourage you today is to start to ask your friends questions. You know, has anything ever happened like this happened to you? Or what do you think about what happened? Was it fair? Or, you know, I read this story the other day, because sometimes we read these stories. I read this story the other day, and what do you think about it? You know, this is the sort of thing that's going to be able to get us to start to have this conversation, right? Thank you so much for spending. Please send in your questions, because I am here today to answer all those questions for you that have been burning. So number one, ask questions to people of color. And number two, allow them to speak their truth and tell their story, because hearing the stories makes it real, and it allows you to be able to put some sense to it. So it doesn't feel like it's a fairy tale, but that it's real. And then it's okay to kind of get mad and say, well, what else can I do? You know, there's some personal biases and silent biases that sometimes we even carry ourselves as human beings that can be a little bit, you know, challenging. It might be what's referred to as, for example, affinity bias. That's that tendency to kind of gravitate towards people who look like us, right? Maybe they're the same race or the same gender or age or educational background, right? And so when we're in the workplace, we want to try to avoid doing that and speak to people outside of our own affinity. There's also kind of name bias. How many times have we seen a name now on Zoom screens and sometimes there's no picture there, or on a resume and we see a name and we think, okay, we're already starting to think about that, fostering that difference of an individual in their head, in our head. So think about those biases. One of the things that we do when we come in and we work with organizations, we work with businesses in this area, is we get the team to think about different ways that they've held bias against people, and to do kind of a blind sort of confession, where people share those biases, right, without revealing who they are. And then we open it up and we read it and we address it and we work our way through that. It's really helpful because a lot of times people want to do the right thing and they feel as though if they speak up or if they share, that others might take offense to it. And so I want to share with you an incredible question I got, and I brought this with me intentionally today to read it. And I'm going to give you an exact example on what to do to foster the proper conversation and to have these conversations. So this person says, "Dear Elaine, I have a racial etiquette question and I'm hoping you might help me out. I'm on a committee with a group of 14 individuals, right? And no person of color, except for one individual who is of Asian descent, is on this particular committee. All right. Now, this committee is designed to help foster diversity that's racial and by gender. There is only, and they said that there's only one person that's there, and that person is of Asian descent, right? There are a few people. I would love to recruit another person of color, another person who's Black. Do I run the risk of offending someone if I reach out to them because I want more racial diversity? I believe this is something that many business owners probably grapple with. How do you reach out to the Black community and yet not offend someone because they might think you're only asking me because I'm Black? It's not just about that, but we want interested business owners who want the fellowship of others walking the same path, but in a sincere way. That's a great question. How do you reach out to someone, right, without offending them because you're Black? Guess what? Take away the fact that you might offend a person. Too often we think that etiquette means that we should withhold information so that we don't offend the person. In this instance, and in every instance, put it completely on the table and say, you know what? I have this committee, we're getting together. Our goal is to make sure that we present something that's more racially and gender balanced, and there is not one Black person on this committee. And I want to make sure that the Black community is represented. So I'm contacting you today to find out if you would be interested in being involved. Put it on the table. Do you know what this is? There's a colloquialism that is very popular right now. It used to only be referenced for women, and it's called having a seat at the table. How many of us as women have heard that? As women, we want to have a seat at the table. We talked about that as a boardroom table. Well, guess what? As the Black community, we want a seat at the table as well. And so to answer this question, you would be offering that person a seat at the table. So we would not be offended. Be very clear, be very frank and say, you know what? I looked around, I did not see a Black person represented, and I'm contacting you because I think your representation matters. We would be honored. So you don't worry about being offensive, because it's not. It's uncomfortable because we see the deficit. And so that deficit is what's probably making you uncomfortable. And that's what I'm saying to the person who's asked this question. That deficit makes you uncomfortable. But to say I'm only inviting you because you're Black, that's a good thing, right? Because you're saying, I want to have you at the table, all right? So one of the other things we can do to foster this thing is, like I said, is to allow people to tell their story and listen to that story and dig deeper. And then you can say, you know, what is it I can do? The other thing is to ask questions. Has this ever happened to you? Or has this ever happened to someone that you know of? Hold people who are in power accountable by requiring training. And when I say training, that doesn't mean this is Black and this is white and this is Asian, but really digging down deep. One of the things that we do at the Swann School of Protocol is we go deeper into the behaviors that we have at work. Let's say, for example, you have an important client that's coming in and you'd like for them to meet some of your junior team members. And then you go and you do that tap, tap, tap on the shoulder, and you grab that person to join you in that thing, in that meeting. And a lot of times we'll gravitate towards, you know, that affinity bias, the people who look like us, that maybe have the same education of us, the ones who we think are similar to us. So we do that tap, tap, tap. So the question that we ask when we're working with with the companies is we say, you know, who are you tapping on the shoulder? Instead now, make that tap, tap, tap more intentional, to step outside of what you're used to and go and tap, tap, tap the Black person on the shoulder, the Asian person, the Hispanic person on the shoulder, and say, hey, come in, I want you to sit in on this meeting with this big client that we have so that you can be a part of this as well. When we start to look at individuals and their accomplishments, look more so at their accomplishments and their abilities as opposed to the color of their skin. It's perfectly fine to be very intentional to seek out talent. Not long ago, this CEO of Wells Fargo got into a lot of trouble because he stated that there just wasn't enough Black talent at the higher levels in the financial industry. Well, he got into a lot of trouble because that's not absolutely the truth. The talent is there. It does exist. It's just that his team needed to be more intentional, and he was probably just speaking from records and what was shared with him. But his team needed to be more intentional with identifying and illuminating that talent. We don't always have to go to the job boards, but as you're looking for talent, look beyond job boards and look beyond looking for specific names. But there are many organizations that focus on just Black people. There are professional organizations, and there's something for everything, whether you're an engineer or a scientist or a graphic designer. There are professional organizations that cater towards people of color. So look at those organizations as you're looking for talent. If you're going to hire vendors for your company and you have a small business and you are a solopreneur, look at trying to hire people outside of your individual circle, making that opportunity to bring someone to making a seat at the table. Another thing you can do is have training courses to constantly refresh and address these areas of focus. And that's the type of training that we provide at the Swann School of Protocol. And then reward people who actually participate in making this shift. When reward those individuals. If you see somebody's really put forth an effort to be inclusive and to ask questions and to sit and listen to stories and to put forth an effort to shift, being an advocate and speaking up. Sometimes in the workplace as Black people, you know, we're afraid to speak up for ourselves because we just want to keep our job. So when you see an injustice done, if you get a little bit uncomfortable, now's the time that you have permission to speak up, because our world is listening. And that's a good thing. That's the thing that gives us so much hope right now. I see several questions coming in, and I'd love to take some time to answer some of the questions. So we do have a moderator who's going to read the questions off, and I'll begin to answer those questions.
All right, Elaine.
The first question I have is, can you give your thoughts on how to engage in conversation with someone who says all lives matter in response to the comment, Black Lives Matter?
Oh, that's such a great question. Thank you for asking that. So here's my example. We are a body of people, okay? I have my own body, my arms, my legs, my feet, my fingers. And if I go in and I say, I broke my arm, and I go into the emergency room and I say, my arm is injured, it's broken. Please help to heal this bone that's broken. What I do not want to hear as a patient is, well, all of your bones matter. And my response is, yes, all of my bones matter. But right now, my arm matters. This part that's broken matters. So what I mean is, although all lives matter, every human being is important. Every human being should be valued. Every human being matters. But right now, your Black brothers and sisters are broken. We are hurting. We have been broken for years. The effects of slavery and then the mindset that was passed on from generation to generation, to the discussions that were held in certain households, and the bias that was held in certain households has been passed on through generation to generation. And some of those individuals are treating Black people unfairly. And so we're broken and we're hurting and we're asking to link up as a people, as a race, as the human race, to fix it. When we are shouting that Black Lives Matter, we're saying that right now, this arm is broken and we need your help.
All right, next question. How do we balance your suggestion to ask our Black friends about real experiences with not wanting to burden them with the work of educating us?
It's not a burden. The work of educating you all, it's not a burden. What I shared earlier is that too often we have these horrific experiences, either it's ourselves, our husbands, our brothers, and so forth, and we go home and we speak amongst one another, but we don't tell you all about it. The fact that we can actually get the opportunity to open up and say, yes, that has happened to me, or yes, last week this happened to my husband or my brother or my nephew, or I read this in this story recently. It's actually not a burden. We just haven't been given the platform to speak. And so this is why I think what's happening in our lives today is we're thinking that maybe this is not necessarily that it's something new, but we don't realize that the person that we go to work with every day, or someone that we're on the same committee with that's smiling and every day, or maybe the woman who's married to a white man, you know, interracial couples and so forth, experience certain things from their own family members, right? We don't know that that happens. And so it's not a burden to ask the question and say, has this happened? We're happy to share. And so I do want you to feel confident in knowing that. And that communication is key. So pay attention to body language when you're asking a person a question. If you notice that, you know, they're recoiling a little bit, maybe their tone of voice starts to drop and they start to appear as though they're embarrassed or not comfortable talking about it, be very frank and say, are you comfortable having this discussion? Because if you're not, I'm all right with stopping it. And and they'll tell you, oh no, let me tell you what happened yesterday, right? Or either they'll say, you know, I am a little bit uncomfortable and this is a very sensitive subject for me, so I don't want to discuss it, all right? So you do your part and ask the questions. And if they say no, then you've done your part to try to engage.
Right. This is just a comment. What a great message, Elaine. I think the question is not, has this ever happened to you, but how many times has this happened to you?
Wow. Yeah, that's another great question. Thank you for that comment.
And let's see.
And you all just keep them coming. I'm so happy to be able to share today. This is not
Elaine.
always a comfortable subject.
Elaine, this is John Sanders. So I have a direct question.
Yes,
So
sir.
what do you see happening as time goes on? Is it getting better? Will you get stopped at that 7-Eleven and that in the current times, or was this a long time ago? Do you see a change?
Well, you know, I think because of the fact that we're having these conversations, I do believe that we are on the path to getting better. I would say that that happened to me a few years ago, but last year in 2020, my husband was sitting outside at his employer at a lunch table, concrete lunch table right here in Carlsbad, you know, working. And I'm sorry, eating his lunch out of a bowl of salad that I sent. So he's eating his lunch out of a Tupperware bowl, and 2 police cars pulled up to him because there was a woman who was inside the building adjacent to them, and we had just entered into the COVID restrictions, and she was uncomfortable with the Black man sitting outside. So she called the police and told the police what they told him that was reported was that there was 2 Black guys in a car smoking marijuana. Well, number one, he was nowhere near our car. If he were, you know, it was parked in the back. And number 2, he was by himself. And he didn't find this out until there was a little bit of investigation doing, but he was detained by the police for that. So unfortunately, it happened, you know, recently for him.
Yeah.
But I think because we're having these conversations, we are on the path to this getting better, because every time we have this conversation, we empower our fellow brothers and sisters, white, Black, Asian, Latino. We empower one another to go out and make a change and make a difference. And I think what we're seeing now is this, you know, tide beginning to take shape, and eventually we'll have a tsunami of change. So change is on the horizon. Getting better is on the horizon. We still have continued work to do.
Well, I think one of the big changes in the last few years is the number of Black people in commercials on TV.
Yeah.
Probably almost more than white these days. I think it may be because a lot of Black people watch TV too,
Yeah.
but I think they really are. You know, going back to your husband out at the table, they may have stopped him not because he was Black, but because he was eating salad.
I have to tell you, I love John Sanders. He is an example of true Christianhood in terms of loving your fellow brother. He's an investor in my company, and he invested in me long before all of this stuff happened. We're going back years. And so he looked at me, he heard me at a speaking engagement. He saw the value that I'm delivering as a business owner, and made an investment in my company, and has been an incredible partner to help my business grow. And so I'm thankful for all of the wisdom that he has imparted in me. And so he is truly a stand-up guy, and a fine example of brotherhood and showing brotherly love to all people. So thank you, John, and I love you.
Thank you, my dear. Enjoy you.
So next question, are most people of color supportive of white Americans who march with the BLM at rallies and support the cause, or do some feel it's not sincere or even hypocritical?
No, when and you look about it, see, you have to think about the freedom fighters, right? That's a great question. So in the 60s, there was the freedom fighters, and a lot of times these were people who were white and Jewish who would march along with people. They really were battered and bruised right alongside everyone. And so, no, we don't. We have, for a long time, was a member of the North County African American Women's Association. We have women who are white, who are members of the organization. So when we find our brothers and sisters that come and join in with us, and they are not Black and they're white, we link arms and we feel more empowered, because then it helps soften us and make us seem, more human-like. So nope, we don't feel like it. If you see injustice being done, we're giving you an atta girl and high-fiving you right along the way. So we really appreciate linking arms together.
What is the difference between using African American or Black? Is there one term that's better to use than another?
Yeah, it's really interesting. It really depends on the person. And so you'd have to ask the person individually. You'll find here in the United States, it's so challenging because Black people are here in this particular country for a few different reasons. The main one is because of slavery. They brought those individuals from Africa to the United States, and then for generations, for over 400 years, right? People were born here. So what happened is there was a movement for individuals Black individuals wanting to identify with their African heritage, just because they didn't feel there was no connection. There was always this disconnect for Black people where they thought, well, what do we have? What traditions and so forth do we have that can go beyond just slavery here in the United States? And so that's where the term, as you dig a little bit deeper, African American came up. It softened it for some people. On the flip side, there are others who came to this country because they are families of immigrants. For example, myself, and so they that came here as immigrants. So you have a mixture of both. Now, here's the key: if Black people were to go to Africa, they would not refer to us as African. They would refer to us as American. Black people in Africa do not see us as African American. They look at you and they say, you're American, and that's it. So the bottom line is it's really personal preference. Some people feel like the word Black is a harsh word. It's oh gosh, it's a little hard. I feel African American sounds nicer, but I'm Black and I'm brown, honey. So I personally prefer to be referred to as a Black woman. Capitalize that being Black when you say it and when you write it. That's the proper AP term for those journalists and so forth. But the proper thing is to capitalize it. So it's really the personal preference. So I would say if you have Black friends, ask them, well, hey, Susie, we've been coming to Wine Wednesdays every week, and I've never thought to ask you, and I know this might be crazy, but which do you prefer? Do you prefer to be referred to as an African American woman or a Black woman? And let her tell you that. And we're happy to tell you, because I prefer for you to reference me in the way that feels most comfortable for me. And so for me personally, I'm Afro-Latina, so that's a whole other story, but all right, keep it coming.
All right, how would you define an ally?
Oh, an ally is an example of the individual that you mentioned, marching up to those, going along with the marching, but you don't have to be so visible as far as that's concerned. An ally can be a person who is marching alongside you. An ally can be a person, for example, a white person who sees us, who looks at a situation and sees that someone might be treated unfairly, right? Maybe you're in the grocery store and you see a young person or what have you being questioned, and you just go stand silently and watch and observe and switch and make a switch and put your niece or nephew or brother or sister or husband in that situation and look at that situation, assess that situation from that perspective. And just your presence there, witnessing whatever transpires can be an ally. And if you should be so bold to step in and say, officer or store clerk or manager, I actually saw what happened, or I'm observing this, and I don't think you're treating this person fairly. That's one way of being an ally. Another way of being an ally, and I'm going to tell you this story, Cory Booker, one of the senators here in the United States, this New Jersey senator, he tells a story about how an attorney who is white connected with a Black organization during the 60s. His mother and father wanted to purchase a house in a neighborhood. They were denied the opportunity to purchase that home. This white attorney was bent on making sure that he made himself available to represent Black people pro bono when it came to buying real estate. And real estate transactions. Another white couple said that they wanted to volunteer to help Black people buy real estate. So what happened is a white couple went in to purchase the home. When everything was said and done and it was time to sign the final documents, this attorney who volunteered his time went in with the parents of our senator, Cory Booker, his mother and father. The realtor that was handling the situation found out that they were Black. He sicked dogs on the family. They called the police on them. They punched the lawyer in the face. But the bottom line was all the documents were signed and his parents were able to continue with the purchase of that home. He grew up in a wonderful neighborhood where a lot of tax dollars went into that neighborhood for great schools. And he continued on and became a United States senator. So that's one way that particular attorney was an ally to Black people. So you can be an ally by observing quietly, by interjecting when you see unfairness being done, by marching right alongside, or by offering your services to the Black community. And you don't have to, this is capitalism, so you don't have to offer everything to everybody free, but you can say, you know what, I'll donate an hour of my time every week to some sort of cause.
It seems like organizations are scrambling to create EDI committees. Does your business help create these and/or have advice to create these kinds of committees?
Yes to both of the above. They are definitely scrambling to create committees, and we do help organizations create these committees. We'll bring you together. And the key that what we do at the Swann School of Protocol is we really try to help meld it with your company culture. We're actually working with a major corporation right now who was just recently in the press for some challenge that they had. And so I'll be flying out to the East Coast to work with them to help them develop in this particular area. And so, yes, we do. But the key that the Swann School of Protocol is what we do is we make sure that we take your company culture and then we take the information that's necessary and we put that together. So it's not separate. It really becomes part of who your company is as an individual. And so we're definitely happy to help.
All right. How can a business hire with diversity targets while keeping the perception as non-exclusionary to all? Example, hiring versus best qualified versus selecting the best minority candidate.
Select the best minority candidate. You know, the thing about it, we are qualified. So here's the key. If you search, you will find individuals who are equally qualified, right? And so if you find someone that's equally qualified, and then you look at the makeup of your business, you can either say, all right, I have one person here and I have another person here, and they're equally qualified. So hire the equally qualified minority candidate. If your goal is to say, you know, we definitely need more diversity, don't say, well, this one's not as qualified, but let me just go ahead and pick the person, because that's not good for your company. Right? I wouldn't do that. I don't care. It's not good, but believe you me, look the right places. Where do you look? Those professional organizations. Look at your local churches. Look online and search for Black church, you know, and send announcements, job announcements to churches. You'll find people of good moral character who are, very qualified and educated in the area. So professional organizations that represent Black people, and even Black churches.
All right, that is all the questions I have in the chat. I will say, if there are any more questions, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask the question directly. We'll just give it a couple more minutes.
Fantastic. So the key is to make sure that you have a balance in your life, in your personal life, and also in your professional life. Whether you are a solopreneur or if you run a company, if you have influence anywhere, insert your influence and use it completely. One of the things that I want to make sure as a chamber member that we do is, for those of you who are thinking about adding diversity and inclusion to your business efforts, if you feel like you need to have a refresh, or you just want us to come in and take a look at things, if you need training as far as your business is concerned, we're offering our services at a discount to chamber members. And so we'd like for you to please just send me a quick email to hello@swanschool.com and tell me that you are interested in having us work with you. We're offering a $100 discount on our services, and we'll apply that certificate to your package that we developed for you. And in addition to that, I'd like for you to please also send an email, because I have a new book coming out that also directs has information on racial interaction and sensitivity. So send me an email to hello@swanschool.com and ask to get on the list for our book for when it's released, and then also sign up to get that discount. So again, as you're working with your staff, as you're hiring vendors, as you are, thank you very much, Yolanda, as you're hiring vendors, think about making sure that you look outside of yourself, look outside of what's comfortable for you, and look for those individuals who are just as qualified. Because folks, again, we are all of the same race. We are all of the human race. Every single race matters. But right now, your Black brothers and sisters are hurting. Oh, there's a couple of more questions that came in.
Yes.
How did I get on TV? Is that one?
Yeah, I've got quite a few more questions that have come in. So the first one, how can we start a national conversation about this subject to start really healing the country so we can be united as one nation where all are equal?
Very good. Start in your own community. Start in your own backyard. Start where you have influence. If you have a Facebook group, if you have an email list, if you are on a committee, start the conversation there. Anything and everything. The way it becomes national is started out as grassroots, because it will grow. If you are part of the National Association of Professional Organizers, you organize people's homes and so forth, start that conversation at your chapter, then introduce it to other chapters, and so on and so on and so on. Folks, we are on a great path, and the fact that we have the desire to do this says that there's so much hope for change in our country. Generations are going to change just because of these conversations today.
All right, question, how did you first get on TV?
I got on TV by being invited by accident. I went to audition for the Martha Stewart Apprentice, and it took place at NBC Studios in San Diego. When I was there, one of the producers invited me to come on and share my etiquette advice. And after my very first appearance, I recognized that this was the thing. So I started doing a tremendous amount of research and training. I went to conferences. I hung out with producers. I came up with a formula on how to get on television, and I put that formula to work, and it's worked for me years and years and years. To this day, I do not have a publicist. I have figured out how to get on television in any market, whether it's local, regional, and even national. And I get asked this question so often that I decided to actually take all of the information during COVID and I put it into a course and I have it available on my website. So I would be happy to share that information with you. And it's not one of those funnel things to where you take the course and then there's another one that comes after that. This is the whole kit and caboodle, one-time investment, and you've got everything you need to get on TV. So if you are interested in sharing your brand and your business and expanding your visibility on television, I would be more than happy to share that with you. Again, just email me, hello@Swann School, and I'll send you the information on that as well.
All right. Last chance for questions. All right, Elaine, thank you so very, very much for being here today. This was extraordinary. I mean, it was wonderful, and the conversation was great. I've learned a lot, and I know a lot of other people have learned a lot here too. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. Yay. All right, thank you everybody for coming today. I'm Kathy Steffen. I'm the Director of Fun here at the Chamber, and I am just so very excited that we had this conversation with Elaine today. And I want to also thank you, John Sanders and Melanie, for being our soapbox presenters today. And I just wanted to let you know the Chamber, we add events every day, and so check our calendar for the upcoming events. Our next First Friday breakfast is March 2nd. Mary Kravitz is our guest speaker. So we will see you there. Next thing coming up, we have Get a Marketing Plan for Your Business from 12 to 1 on February 11th. And our next happy hour is with the San Marcos Chamber of Commerce from 5 to 6 p.m. on February 7th. I'm going to leave everything open here. So if there's any more questions coming in as people leave this morning, thank you again, Elaine, and everybody have a wonderful Chamber day.
Elaine, I just wanted to offer how wonderful and amazing you are. Thank you so much. Very, very insightful for all of us.
It was my absolute pleasure. You're welcome.
Yep, I second that. Really, really valuable conversation, much needed, and really